This is our final recording before the exam, and it is the last Gemara that we learned together. It comes from HaMafkid, the third Perek of Masechet Bava Metziah, Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. It is a Mishnah which has 4 cases, followed by a Gemara that poses a number of contradictions and resolves them. It contains a little bit of material that we didn't get to in class, so please listen very carefully. Matnitin, our Mishnah. Amar lishnayim gazalti leechad mikem mana ve'eni yodea eze mikem. The first case is somebody who admits to being a thief. He says, I robbed or I stole from one of you a mana, we'll call that $100, and I don't know which one of you I stole from. That's case number 1. Or he says, Aviv shel echad mikem hifkid li mana ve'eni yodea ezehu. One of your fathers entrusted $100 to me, and I don't know whether it's your father or your father. In both cases, he himself is admitting to a debt that he owes one of them $100, either because he stole or because he was a shomer. And the question is, what do you do? So the first opinion is notain lazeh, the actual conclusion. It's the only opinion. Notain lazeh mana velazeh mana shehoda mipi atzmo. He gives each one of them $100 because, after all, he admitted that he owed this debt. So even though he doesn't owe one of them, he is giving more than he actually owes. We're going to see later that this is a person who wants to avoid any sin. He wants to get kapara. He wants to be yotze min hashamayim, yedei shamayim. He wants to be yotze that he paid back the person, even if it costs him extra. And that's why we let him pay. We advise him, since he's asking us, to pay each person $100. Here comes case 3. Shnayim shehefkidu eitzel achad, zemana vezematayim. 2 people entrusted to one shomer. One entrusted $100 and the other entrusted $200. Ze omer shali matayim v'ze omer shali matayim. And when they come to pick up their money, each one claims that they gave the larger amount. So what do you do now? Here, the guy isn't admitting that he owes $200 to each. They are trying to get the $200, and one of them is a crook. So what he does is notein lazeh mana velazeh mana. He gives each one $100. V'ashar yehemunach ad sheyavo Eliyahu, and the rest should be put aside until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. That idea is, it means we don't know who is owed the other 100, and so we put it aside. Eliyahu is supposed to come right before Mashiach and straighten out all kinds of things. So by saying Ad Sheyavo Eliyahu, it means until we know who really is owed the extra money. But this is actually the subject of a machloket, because Rabbi Yossi argues here, as he did in an earlier Mishnah, that the result is not what we want for the legal system. Amar Rabbi Yossi imkain mahifsid haramai. If that is so, then how does the cheater lose? There is no penalty for the person who is a crook and claims money that isn't his. And we don't accept that sort of a result for the legal system. And even if it means costing an innocent person some money, so he says, Ela hakol yehemunach ad sheyavo Eliyahu. Nobody gets paid anything, because that way the crook doesn't get anything, even though the person who really gave the $200 is not going to get what he is owed. And now we say the fourth case is now the same thing, but with an object. If you have 2 vessels, meaning like 2 vases, let's say, and one is worth $100 and the other is worth $1,000. Ze omer yafeh shali v'ze omer yafeh shali. Each one says that the $1,000 one belonged to him. So here, even though you're going to have to sell the larger one, the more expensive one, in order to get the money, the first opinion says that's exactly what you do. Notein et hakatan le'echad mehen. You give the less valuable one to one of them, whichever. Umitoch hagadol, and from the money you get from selling the more expensive one, notein demei katan lasheni, you give $100 to the other, and each one thereby gets the only thing that we know for sure. And the rest gets put aside until we know, till Eliyahu comes. Amar Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Yossi has the same complaint. He says, "Im kain ma hefsid haramai." How does the cheater lose out? We want there to be a deterrent from people doing this sort of thing. Ella hakol yehei munachat sheyavo Eliyahu. Everything should be put aside. So those are the 4 cases in the Mishnah. Now the Gemara will pose some contradictions. This is still what we learned in class. The Gemara says, Alma, apparently, from the first case we see, misfeika mafkinan mamona, that if we are in doubt, ding, 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 this is a good phrase, that out of doubt, we will take money out of somebody's possession who has that money. Because the person who admits that he stole has to pay both people in the first case. Velo amrina, and we do not say, ding, 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 another important phrase, uki mamona bechezkat mare, that we should keep money in the possession of the person who is holding it. That possession is 10/10 of the law in this case. We don't say that because we make the guy give 100 to each when he says that he stole from them, or that each one gave him a something to watch. Uriminihi, but there is a contradiction, because in the Mishnah it also says Shnayim she'efkidu etzel echad ze maneh v'ze matayim, ze omer shel matayim v'ze omer sheli matayim, noten la ze manav v'la ze manav v'ashar yehei munachat sheyavo Eliyahu. So we find that in the third case, where they're arguing over whether I gave 200, who gave the 200, we do not say that we take the money from the shomer to pay them both. We only say that he pays what is sure at most, according to the Tanna Kama. So that seems to be a contradiction. Amar le, so when this contradiction was posed, the Gemara, the sages who were asked this contradiction, answered, Pikadon agezel karamit? Are you comparing? The first case was somebody stole. The third case that you brought the contradiction from was somebody who was entrusted. Pikadon. So you're comparing the two? Gezel de avadi surah kansuhu rabbanan. If the guy stole and he admitted it, so the rabbis are going to penalize him. They'll make him do a penalty, and they're going to have him pay each one $100. But pikadon de lo avadi surah. But in the third case, the guy did not do anything wrong, so he doesn't have to pay more than what he actually received. Lo kansuhu rabbanan. The rabbis will not impose a penalty. Now the Gemara says, I have 2 more contradictions for you. And this is where our stuff gets new. Virami pikadona pikadon. Well, I'm going to ask a contradiction between 2 cases of shomer, of pikadon. Virami gezel a gezel. And I will ask a contradiction on 2 cases of theft. Pikadona pikadon. I will ask from one case of entrusting shomer to another, because the katani reisha, it says in the very first case, it's in the second case rather, in the beginning, the reisha, the first half of the Mishnah, O aviv shel achad mikem hefkid etzli mana ve'eni yodea ezehu noten lazeh mana v'lazeh mana. It says that if I don't know who gave me the pikadon, I give $100 to each one. But then, Uriminhi, there is a contradiction, because it says, Shnayim shehefkidu. In that third case, where they're dealing with the vase, you have him not giving each. You only give to the extent that you know for sure. He gives them what you know, but not more than what you know. How come in case 2, he gives each one more than what is the fact, and in the third case he gives only exactly what we know for sure? Amar Rava, Rava answered, Reisha na'aseh k'mi she'ifkidu lo b'shnei krichot. In the first case, where he says, you guys each gave me, so we consider that tantamount to his receiving in two separate bundles, the Hava Leila Medak, where he should have known, he should have made a record of who was giving the large amount and who was giving the smaller amount. But Seifa, but in case 3, Na'aseh k'mi she'ifkidu lo bekerach echad, v'lo Hava Leila Medak. It is comparable to a case where they gave it to him in one bundle, even though it was really two people, but they came at the same time and they gave him money, and he doesn't know. He says, if you gave it to me at the same time and you trusted each other, why should I have made a record? Why should I have suspected that you would deny? They entrusted him together at the same time. The Amar Lahu, he says to them, Ant gufayhu lo kabditu ahadadi. You're not makpid on each other. You don't care. You do it together and you trust each other to see what's going on. Ana kapidna. Should I be suspicious of you? And therefore, why should I have remembered who gave me the larger one? And now the Gemara says one final contradiction. V'rami gezel a gezel. There is a contradiction between theft cases. On the one hand, Katani Hacha Amar L'Shnaim Gazalti Le'echad Mikem Mana Ve'eni Yodeh Eza Mehemo. Oh, Aviv Shalachad Mikem Hifkid Li Mana Ve'eni Yodeh Eza. The first two cases, I don't know who gave me the one amount or the one item. Notein Lazem Mana Ve'Lazem Mana. He gives each one. So basically, you give more to be able to give each one. Uriminhi. But then we have in Bava Kama and elsewhere the following statement, the following Tanaitic statement: Gazal echad mechamisha ve'eino yodeh eza mehem gazal. If you stole from one person and you don't know which person of 5 people it is, ze omer tigazal v'ze omer tigazal. Each one says, you stole from me. Meiniach gezela beinehem u'mistalek diver Rabbi Tarfon. You put down the item you stole, and let them decide among themselves, says Rabbi Tarfon. Alma, apparently according to Rabbi Tarfon, misfeika lo mafkinan mamona, that if you're in doubt, you don't make the guy pay extra. You just take the amount that is owed. V'amrinan, but we say, oki mamona becheskat marei. We say that any extra money, the shomer keeps, or the gazlan in this case keeps, and you don't make him give extra. Umimai, the matnitin dahacha Rabbi Tarfon. So you're asking a contradiction where you do that on our Mishnah, where you make him pay extra. But how do you know that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Tarfon? Maybe Rabbi Tarfon feels differently than our Mishnah. The answer is the katani Allah dehahi mode Rabbi Tarfon beomer l'shnayim gazalti le'echad mikem mana ve'eni yodeh eze mikem shenoten lazem mana ve'lazem mana. Because over there it also says that Rabbi Tarfon agrees to what it says in our Mishnah, that if you stole 2, you have to give each one. So if the Mishnah follows Rabbi Tarfon, then how come in the case of 5 it is different? The answer is Hatam de Katibaile Hacha Bevalatzet Midei Shamayim. Because in the case over there, it's dealing with people claiming the money. But over here, it's talking about somebody who is not being claimed, but as we said earlier, he does not have to give it. He wants to be Yotzei Yedei Shamayim. He wants to be Yotzei, his obligation to heaven, and make sure that the person he stole from was given it back. So Minadin, he doesn't have to give to each one, but he wants to just to make sure. Daikanami, that always means we can deduce that also from the language that our answer to the stira is right. Dekatani, because it says shahoda mipi atzmo. The Mishnah says he admitted it by himself, which means this is a religious guy who wants to become a Baal Tshuva. He stole, but he wants to go straight. So therefore he wants to be Yotzei Yedei Shamayim, and he gives to each. Shma mina, that indeed can be deduced. Yasher koach, good luck in your studying.